Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Welcome to an all-new episode of The Payoff. I'm Tom. That's Jeff. Jeff, how the hell are you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. At this point, we're in October, the crisp air, feeling that a little bit. We've got some themed events coming up here. It's a bit busy. We got Crown Jewel. We got a Halloween Havoc in a couple weeks here, like Saturday Night Main Event. Like there's just a whole lot of wrestling happening this month. I guess there's an AEW show too, but whatever. So, yeah.
You've gone deep into the archives recently, I feel like. Where did this match come from?
Yeah, this was a deep dive. This one was, again, as I was just kind of looking at different vault matches that they have, and this is not the last time we will visit the vault, at least for right now. We'll come back to it eventually here, but when I was looking, the last few weeks, as listeners have been kind of following, we've had a lot of different vault matches, and so this was one when I was just kind of cruising through some different ones. I was like, what the hell is this? And so and it's exactly what it is. It's like a what the hell, like random match from 1990. And so putting all these people together, you kind of question, like, what's the deal? I remember one of my favorite action figures next to Big Boss Man was the Texas Tornado. And so our first Texas Tornado match, and this one too. So yeah, I mean, why not? It is a dark match on Superstars. So it's, like you said, it's way down there in the vault, but it should be a pretty good one.
Well, I'm pumped to cover it, man. I say we get right into this one.
Yeah, let's do it.
You ready?
Let's go.
Time for the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So you mentioned this. I think there's it's interesting because I think the WWE Vault released some Superstars episodes and then some dark matches from Superstars. So, what's fun about these shows is they're only an hour long, and then without commercials, they're 45 minutes. So I've actually been putting on some Superstar matches. Now you'll find that there's a lot of, on some of the episodes, there's a lot of squash matches. So this particular one took place 8/8/1990, so August 8th of 1990. It's a Superstars taping at the Civic Center in Providence, Rhode Island. And on this particular show, we had Dusty Rhodes being accompanied by Sapphire pinning Dale Wolf with an elbow drop in 2 minutes. We had Demolition, your WWF Tag Team Champions, defeating George Scotland and Mario Mancini in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Rick Rude, being accompanied, of course, by Bobby the Brain Heenan, is going to pin Mike Picari with the Rude Awakening in a minute. Kerry Von Erich is going to pin Bob Bradley with the Tornado Punch in a minute 59. And then we have this dark match, Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude against the Texas Tornado and the Ultimate Warrior. And part of what's fun about this is Texas Tornado kind of looked like the Ultimate Warrior and very similar builds and looks. And so this will be a fun one. Probably not a massive build to this, but what were some of the things going on that made sense for these four to be in a tag match against each other?
Yeah, and this is your typical of the time, like you've got, the two enemies against each other, and then you've got really the two heels pairing up in order to take on the faces in this one. And so we'll kind of look at it from that lens. And so we actually had two like championship feuds going on kind of around this match when things were happening. So first we'll look at Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude. Warrior won the title from Hogan at WrestleMania 6, just a couple months prior to this in April. Rick Rude was the former Intercontinental Champion who was kind of being groomed as the Warriors challenger that summer, to kind of take over as the heel after he won, or, Warrior winning the belt from Hogan. They did have some history between them. Rude actually beat the Warrior for the Intercontinental title in 1989 with some interference from Bobby Heenan on that one. Warrior ended up winning it back later that year in 1989. And so, this is them kind of going at it again to kind of reset the stage. Now, along with this, this taking place, like you said, on August 8th, 1990, it was also in between, or kind of in the lead up to what would be a steel cage match between these guys for the WWE Championship. So not quite to that match yet, a little bit of aftermath tease there. So these two had some back and forth, not just for the Intercontinental title, but for the championship title as well, too. Now, on the flip side, take a look at Mr. Perfect and Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich as well, too. So this one, between the two of them, was for the Intercontinental title. So you had Mr. Perfect actually regaining the title in May after the Warrior vacated it. And then the Texas Tornado actually debuted in July of 1990 and is immediately pushed. And so this was very early in his WWE career. He had not been around very long at this point. And so, doing some of these matches, this was really the beginning of their feud at the time, as they would go on to have a match as well at that SummerSlam in a couple of weeks. So we're kind of in this weird period where Mania is behind us. Hogan's not the champ anymore. We're trying to have these other superstars and build these other people. So how do we get there? You've got Kerry Von Erich debuting. You've got the Warrior, all these different feuds that will eventually come to a head at that SummerSlam in a couple of weeks. But for right now, until we get there, they had a couple individual matches on the Superstar show, but we get this dark match kind of putting them all together. So it made from, if you were following the storylines at that time, makes a ton of sense why they were having this match. And so, it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to covering this one. There's, I'm guessing this is probably not a 20-minute match, so we're going to have to talk fast and cover a lot.
Yeah, it is not. Yep.
Good. Well, let's get right into this. We have a YouTube link. We're at the 5-minute mark of full match, Ultimate Warrior and Texas Tornado versus Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude. This is in the WWE Vault. It seems like every day we're adding a ton of content to this vault. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's funny. I'm just looking here because off to the right, I'm sure it's different for you, but I can see some of the recently posted videos, and it's obviously pulling things that I haven't seen yet. But I mean, some of the stuff, It's just, they've got all kinds of these dark matches, and it's gonna be fun. So I'm looking forward to covering this one. We're at the 5-minute mark. Jeff, are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. It's time for the payoff.
Ho! It's time for the payoff.
All right, here we go. Can you hear the weasels in the background? They're giving tackles to Bobby Heenan.
Well, they look like twins out there, Warrior and Kerry Von Erich.
I figured they would. Oh my goodness! You almost can't, between the, not being HD and being like a dark match. I mean, you can barely tell which is which. All right, so Warrior immediately tags in Kerry Von Erich, so he can go against Perfect, because of course those two are the ones that are feuding. And Texas Tornado, very, very quick run. I mean, from what Bruce Pritchard has said on his podcast, I mean, basically, they brought him in and had big plans and gave him the Intercontinental title, and he just wasn't the performer they thought they were getting. I think at this point, either he had his foot amputated and had a prosthetic in, or he was about to and had a bad foot injury. So keep an eye on how Kerry Von Erich moves around. I certainly never noticed it as a kid. And, it's funny. Sometimes I'll hear Bruce talk about things that, in the back that they thought like, hey, this guy couldn't wrestle anymore. This guy couldn't go. And I don't know, at least as a kid, I sure as hell didn't notice. I mean, now I think you do because of the way the work rates are and what we expect. But back in this day, I mean, I certainly don't remember as a kid going, oh, that wrestler's not as good. So,
yeah. So the motorcycle accident was actually in 1986. So no clue, so for 4 years almost, like he's working without a foot.
and to the best of my knowledge, they kept that quiet. So like at this time,
yes,
nobody knew. And he either kept his boot on or would always have pants on or whatever it was to protect it. So, yeah, interesting. But again, I mean, to the naked eye, I don't think you notice. I don't know. Keep an eye out on that. Perfect bumping all over for Von Erich. I mean, I still have not seen the Von Erich movie yet, but as very, very tragic. He passed away at 33 years old.
Yeah, crazy.
I mean, just so young. So, WWF, they gave him this Texas Tornado gimmick. I mean, of course, trying to sell merchandise and trying to, create these larger than life personas. At one point, his nickname was the Modern Warrior. Of course, you weren't going to come into the WWF and call yourself the Warrior at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. You got everyone being a dark. It's always got to enjoy the Rick Rude pants there too, with his face on them. Of course, can't forget about that. Everybody is moving well. Like you wouldn't know like some of the issues that everyone was having at this point, and all the behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, it's so far it's been pretty fast paced with everybody.
I mean, Rude always looks like $1 million. All these guys do. I mean, just phenomenal athletes. So to the best of my knowledge, the last match that Kerry Von Erich ever wrestled in was in ECW in January of 1993.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that would have been his last match. Very few, actually almost no matches very, very few that I can find that had rankings. So tough to say what his best match was. I think the most iconic, of course, was him beating Ric Flair. That would have been Texas Stadium. That was back in 1984. So that would have been 6 years prior to this.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge, he started his career in 1978. And so by the time he got to WWE, he was he was not he was at the end of his career at this point. And so I'm kind of looking at it against Paul Pershman at Big Time Wrestling was his debut. And so
and what year was that?
Just May 7th, 1978. Wow. It was actually his dad's wrestling promotion, Big Time Wrestling. And so and so that's where, so at this point, that's, he's been out there for 12 years by the time we get to him. Now, that was one thing that when he made his debut that WWE made a point of they were calling him the Texas Tornado. The announcers were also calling him Kerry Von Erich, which is how he was kind of known, but they didn't, as they do with a lot of these wrestlers, they don't acknowledge who they were before they got here. And so, really interesting. I do kind of wonder the thought process of you have Kerry Von Erich who had this following, people knew who he was, and then all of a sudden he's in WWE as Texas Tornado. And so, and even I didn't, being young, I didn't know Kerry Von Erich. And so other than, the announcer saying the name, but Texas Tornado makes, he was Texas Tornado to me. That was it until, years later.
And I would imagine in this era, a guy, because we're obviously on the tail end of the territory days. I would imagine that you'd want to headline any house show in Texas with him. So I would imagine that, they were very strategic about positioning certain guys on the card in their areas, Minnesota or Texas or Florida or Portland or wherever, they came up from. So most memorable matches, again, the one that I think we've all seen highlights from, Texas Stadium, May 6, 1984, he beat Ric Flair in Texas in front of 45,000 fans. And then that was dedicated to his brother who had just passed away. So that was kind of the Mecca. These guys, 18 days later, wrestled in Japan, and Flair won the title back. But apparently it was a great match, and that was a big one too. His Intercontinental title win against Mr. Perfect. There's another one that I don't know what the quality of the video is. I know I've heard of this one, the 6-man tag war between the Von Erichs and the Freebirds. And I think they did that a number of times, but that was big money back then. And another fun match, AWA Super Clash 3, Kerry Von Erich versus Jerry Lawler to unify the AWA World title. So that was Kerry Von Erich's WCCW championship against Jerry Lawler's AWA championship. And apparently they had a bloodbath, and a lot of territory politics were involved in that one as well. So, not a long career, but certainly many big memories. And, these guys were rock stars, man. I mean, how else can you say it?
Yeah. It's interesting, because you're talking about the territories at this time, and they're in Rhode Island for this show. So it's really interesting to just see kind of, the fans know who he is, like Kerry Von Erich, this Texas guy that, up from that. And they're working him over at this point. They're obviously waiting for the Warrior hot tag on this one, because Tornado's been working most of the match. They kind of cut off the ring. Yeah. But unless you were really involved in following wrestling, would you know who he is? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, is that, obviously, no internet, no. I didn't know who he was. You may have heard of the Von Erichs in the Apter magazines or wherever, but you didn't know who these people were. You didn't know their backstory. You weren't following them on social media. So that's that of course it was so much different then. That's, the old vignettes to establish these guys. Now, you have them in NXT, you know who they are, or you're following them on the indies, so that when they debut, there's years of equity already built into these characters, versus having to start from scratch and say, hey, we're going to create the $1 Million Man. You may have heard of Ted DiBiase, but very few, nationally know who he is. And so we're going to create this gimmick around him. And it's different times. But I'll tell you one thing that I've been thinking about. Just obviously, we have streaming deals floating all over the place, and there's ESPN and Netflix and Max, and pretty much everyone's in the wrestling business at this point, it feels like. And one of the things, a lot of this just has to do with technology, although I feel like the WWE leverages their content as well as any entertainment property. I just think there's so much brilliance in the fact that there are so many ways to hot tag for the Warrior. Place going nuts here. Let's check in real quick on the sound. I know he wasn't Hulk Hogan, but he was your number 2 guy. People love him. It's going crazy. But there are so many different ways, Jeff, to consume the content now. You don't have to watch the shows to consume the content. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's YouTube, there's clips, there's TikTok. All right, so Warrior, shoulder block, flash. Here. Place going now. There you go.
Here are your winners, the team of the Texas Tornado and the Ultimate Warrior.
All right, so there you go. But no, just to close the loop on that, I find that they do such a good job. I mean, you could have someone that follows the product and never watches Raw on Netflix, never watches on USA, but they watch the PLEs, or they don't watch the PLEs, but they watch WrestleMania and they catch the rest on Twitter because they follow a couple people that post a lot of wrestling content. So it's just interesting now. I mean, so many different ways. And I'm sure they do all this in their market research, but you can have so many different types of fans. You know, you have the hardcore fans, you have they just follow it on TikTok. You have people that are fans because of Logan Paul and only watch because of Logan Paul and only watch his stuff. You have the lapsed fans that probably never watch, but tune into WrestleMania and put it on for their kids, or they watch Royal Rumble through WrestleMania. I mean, it's just, there's so many different types of fans that watch on cable, that watch on streaming, that watch after the fact, that have a VPN and still have the WWE network overseas. I don't know. And they've done such a great job of this. Now this WWE Vault, I mean, they're putting all this content out and people are loving it. And they're just continuing to lean into YouTube, which is brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
All right, let's get to the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
What'd you think?
Better than expected. Like, it was a tight little match. It kind of made all the sense in the world for what it was, of, you know, going with the Warrior hot tag, Tornado getting worked over, the heels working him over, and then just, you know, a good little finish on it. Is a dark match. Like, if that was, you know, what they sent you home with, I'd be pretty happy. How about you?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it was a fun match. It was it's not going to be a 10 on the payoff score, but it was a good match.
No, absolutely. So these guys, like I said, spoiled it a little bit before here, but we had the steel cage match with Warrior and Rude. Warrior actually beat Rude clean on this one to retain the championship. Part of that was because this was Rick Rude's final WWE pay-per-view. After this show, SummerSlam, he actually left over, you know, kind of whatever you want to call it, contract disputes. He ended up in WCW, as we all know, and so there was that. And so that kind of effectively ended their feud between the two of them. Tornado actually, in a surprise match, won the Intercontinental Championship from Mr. Perfect. He was actually taking the place of Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who was actually supposed to be in that match, but then got hurt. Perfect ended up winning the belt back in November, so not that long after this one, where, again, just a heel and having his reign there. But Texas Tornado just kind of, it was a short reign, you know, behind the scenes stuff that was happening, whether injuries or whatever it might be, that he was eventually, you know, within really the 12 months after his debut, was kind of being really phased out of many storylines and just kind of being that character on the side. And so, but Warrior remained the champ until WrestleMania 7, where he ended up dropping the belt to Sergeant Slaughter on that one. And so that's when he kind of started transitioning the Warrior character. But PWI this year, they didn't really have any rankings on this one because they were doing monthly at this point. So there was no reviews on this one either because it was a dark match. So we stand alone on this one. So what are you thinking for a payoff score on this one, Tom?
I got this at a 5. It was, you know, it wasn't bad. It wasn't earth shattering, but I mean, a fun match. I mean, Hall of Famers, no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I had it at a 6. I think that's good enough. Like, it wasn't anything to, you know, it was a fun one. If you want to see these guys, I would say probably add to the list those kind of SummerSlam matches. I'll kind of look into see how they were or not. But yeah, overall, like, it was perfectly fine. And like I said, if I was in the crowd and that's what sent me home, I'd be happy.
Well, it's a fun one. What do you got for us next week?
Oh, where are we going? As it's the Saturday night main event is the big thing for the next couple of, like I say, months, weeks here, especially leading up to John Cena's retirement. We are going to go back to one of the OG ones, Saturday night main event 2. And this would have been way back in 1985. I feel like we keep getting older and older on some of these. And so I'm okay with that too. And so, but should be a fun one as we're looking at Paul Orndorff, I can say it, taking on Roddy Piper And Saturday night main event number 2.
Okay. Well, I'm pumped to cover it, man. Should be fun.
See what happens. Yep.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone listening. And as always, we'll see you next week on an all new episode of The Payoff.